Greetings, guys. I'm Tyrik Wynn on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network. We have an amazing guest in the studio today. We have the Congresswoman Nikema Williams, represent Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Appreciate you so much for taking the time. How are you?
Absolutely, Tyrik. I am here. It is crunch time, but I got one correction. I represent the fighting 5th Congressional District.
Okay, all right, fighting 5th.
That's right.
I love it. So, yeah, like you said, a couple days left.
Few days left, and we got to get it all in. We know that this election is critical, and we are a battleground state here in Georgia, and that means that people are freaking out over how close it is, but we always knew it would be this close because we know that in battleground states, it comes down to making sure that every voter gets out and casts their ballot. In Georgia in 2020, we only won by 11,780 votes. Strange that I know that, huh?
Yeah, everybody know that number.
But that means that we know that we have to get our people out to vote. The last day to vote is Friday, November 1st. And so people have to make sure that they are casting their ballots. The last day to vote is Tuesday, November 5th.
Yep, absolutely. And so I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to the numbers, but what do you think about the numbers? I mean, Georgians are turning out in record numbers to early vote.
We have crushed every early voting record in the state's history. We surpassed 3 million votes yesterday. So 3 million Georgians and counting have already cast their votes early. And if people are trying to vote early, they can go to iwillvote.com/GA and find their closest early voting location, and they can be a part of this history-making election.
Awesome. I love that. This is great. Yeah, one thing we've been advocating here is for people to get out and vote, make their voices heard is very important, especially in a critical election like this one.
Absolutely. This election is so important to me. We have a stark contrast on the ballot, Tyrik. And I understand that when I went and cast my ballot on Sunday, I was voting for my freedoms. And that includes my reproductive freedom as a woman in this country and as good men who love the women in this country. And that includes our freedom to vote. I serve in the seat that was held by the late Congressman John Lewis. And so voting rights is always core and central to everything that I do because it empowers every other issue that we care about. And that also includes our economic freedom because people in this country are sick and tired of just getting by. We deserve an opportunity to get ahead. And that's what this election is about. That's why I cast my ballot for Vice President Kamala Harris on Sunday during early voting.
Okay, sounds good. And I want to actually ask you about that. So obviously you have endorsed Vice President Harris for president. Can you share how you feel what she brings to the table and why you think she's the best choice for leading the country, especially on issues that, I looked at your website, your, social justice and healthcare. So why do you think that she's the best choice for the job?
Absolutely. I thought you never asked her, but I am happy to share. So I've had the opportunity to work with Vice President Harris. I've been in Congress for 4 years now and got there and got right to work. And what I've been able to work with her on has been transformational for this country. And we know that we have more work to do. Vice President Harris, from day one, when she announced that she was running, she made sure that she laid out a clear path to move our country forward because the American people are sick and tired of the division of Donald Trump and his Republican Party. That's not all Republicans. We're clear about that. But Donald Trump is leading people down the wrong path. And what we know is that Kamala Harris is not looking to be a president for Democrats or Republicans, but all the people. Even when she did her big speech before 75,000 people on the lips at the National Mall, she reaffirmed her commitment to getting in the White House and doing the work of the people. Where Donald Trump is coming in with a hit list and an enemy list, Kamala Harris has a to-do list, lowering cost for the average American, making sure that we can create more first-time home buyers by getting this down payment assistance, $25,000 for down payment assistance. I know that when I was looking to buy my first home, which was not that long ago, $25,000 would have been life-changing for me to be able to get into that first home. And also just thinking about, she talks about her story with her mom and how she cared for her mom during her final days of battling cancer. And so many Americans have a similar story, having to leave their jobs, having to pay out of pocket to get someone to care for their family members when they're in times of need. And I experienced that. I left my job as a teacher right here in Metro Atlanta and went back to Alabama when my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And now Kamala Harris has a plan so that you can use Medicare to pay for home health assistance so that people don't have to go bankrupt or quit their jobs just to take care of a sick family member. That's life-changing. So Kamala Harris is a plan that is about the people of this country, not just her personal friends and not just billionaires. Because I don't know about you, Tyrik, but I wasn't born a billionaire. Now, I believe in creating generational wealth. And she's also focused on that. And if you look at her specific agenda for Black men in this country, we understand that Black people, Black men specifically, have had so many things stacked against us since day one. And she has a plan to help us build that generational wealth so that we can start more small businesses, build that economic future to leave something behind for the next generation. So I'm excited to vote for Kamala Harris. And I cannot wait to celebrate on election night. But I know that that's not possible without doing the work between now and when the polls close at 7 p.m. on November 5th.
Got it. Okay. And so what do you have to say to those voters who have, just heard what you had to say and have been hearing on both sides, but they might still they might still be on the fence about participating in voting, period, or who they're going to vote for? What's your message to those people?
So I always ask voters, do they want someone looking out for them or for themselves? And that is across every spectrum, not just in politics. And when I have a 9-year-old son and when I teach Carter about his friends, he doesn't want to just be with those selfish kids who are only looking out for themselves, because you need to make someone in your life, and that includes people who you elect to lead us, who is willing to look out for you in your time of need. And that's what this is about. We should have leaders in this country who are willing to look out for the American people. We have Donald Trump, who has bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade. Bragged about it. And then here in Georgia, we literally have women dying because of the abortion ban that Trump made possible. Trump is responsible for the deaths of Kendi Miller and Amber Thurman. I had an opportunity to sit down with Amber Thurman's mom and her sisters to hear their story. Amber Thurman's mom has never even voted before. Never voted. But now she's on the campaign trail for Kamala Harris because she understands that had it not been for Trump's abortion ban, her daughter would be here today. Her daughter's death was preventable. And so that's why this issue transcends gender lines. For the men that are listening, what if it was someone in your family, your sister, your aunt, your mom, your wife, your girlfriend? We want them to be able to get the care that they need and deserve, regardless of how you feel about abortion. Politicians should not be inserting themselves in the personal medical decisions of women. That should be between a woman and her doctor, not politicians, and especially not Donald Trump.
Yeah, I know that's been one of the biggest issues is women's rights. And when it comes to this, obviously it's different on either side you look at it. And so for those women who are out there who are basically saying, because I've been to a couple of rallies. I've been covering the rallies, and I hear I've interviewed some women Trump supporters, and I'll ask them, and they say they'll always lean towards talking about other issues and policies and stuff. And Donald Trump sent me a check and this and that. What do you?
Well, that's a lie too, Tyrik. And Donald Trump, as my grandma would say, Tyrik, a lie don't care who tell it, as long as it get out. And Trump has let a lot of lies get out. And so we're also combating misinformation in this election cycle, because what Donald Trump did was, when Congress passed funds to look out for hardworking Americans. Now, mind you, a democratically controlled Congress, because funding can only initiate from Congress. And I'm a member of Congress, so I take pride in that, Tyrik. Yeah. And then he signed his name to it. And presidents don't generally sign their names to a check that is being sent out to the American people, because it's not about them. It's about the people. But Donald Trump continues to show us time and time again exactly who he is. Kamala Harris stands up for the American people. She did it when she was Attorney General of California. She did it as a U.S. Senator, and she will do it as our next president of the United States.
Okay, got it. And I want to move on a little bit, and we'll come back to Vice President Harris. I want to talk about you a little bit, right?
We can talk about me.
Yeah. And you talked about voting rights and John Lewis a little bit earlier, but I do want to talk about this because you've been a powerful advocate for the fighting 5th District.
The fighting 5th.
Continuing the legacy of Congressman John Lewis. So can you share how his influence has shaped your vision and approach to Congress?
Absolutely. So Congressman Lewis, I had an opportunity to know him personally and learn from him. And the one thing that really sticks out to me is Congressman Lewis taught me that you always show up for your people. And so I strive every day to make sure that I'm showing up for the good people who sent me to Washington, D.C. to represent them. The United States Congress is the only position in the entire country that you cannot be appointed to. You must be elected by the people. And I take pride in being elected by the people of this district and aim to make them proud every day. And when I show up, I look at the lens, I look at every policymaking decision through the lens of how does it impact the people that I'm here to serve and those most marginalized. And that's exactly how Congressman Lewis approached his work in Congress. And I continue to do that in my work around affordable housing, making sure that we can build generational wealth. I moved to Atlanta after college in Alabama, looking for opportunity, looking for this place, this mythical place of Atlanta where Black people could go and grow and prosper. And after getting here and then being elected to Congress, not knowing a soul when I moved here, but now being elected to Congress and learning that Atlanta had one of the highest racial wealth gaps in the country, that was crazy to me. And so I know that home ownership is one of the best ways to close that racial wealth gap. And so I'm on the House Financial Services Committee, and I am working on a number of housing initiatives to make sure that we can build more home ownership in our communities, especially here in Atlanta. And then businesses. I've introduced legislation to get more support for small businesses. And I'm a third generation HBCU alum. Shout out to my HBCU, Talladega College in Alabama. And so I'm also working on entrepreneurship in the Black community and other minority communities for a grant program that would be housed at HBCUs and minority serving institutions. And so these are big things that would really change the way that we move forward. And again, not just continue to get by, but get ahead in this country. So I'm excited to be elected and for my third term coming up. I'm just going to name it and claim it, Tyrik.
Okay.
To be reelected and get back to Congress and get to work on behalf of the people, because that's exactly what Congressman Lewis would be doing right now, working on behalf of the American people.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about that because you talked about the housing initiatives. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that and kind of explain to the viewers exactly what those initiatives are and what they entail?
Well, I know you said we're done talking about Vice President Kamala Harris,
No,
but
go ahead,
Tyrik,
yeah.
when we go to the ballot to vote, that home ownership initiative that she has for first-time home buyers is critical. $25,000 for first-time homeowners so that they can get into that first home. And when you talk to most people and they're trying to figure out how to buy that first home, it's the down payment that holds them back. So they might have been working on the job and they're already paying the same thing in rent, but down payment assistance changes lives and it changes your financial situation. So that is critical, and I cannot wait to proudly support that as a member of the United States Congress. But then also some things that I've already been working on, like thinking about your credit scores and your credit reports, so that when you are looking to buy a home, we can look at a diversified set of things on your credit report, like your rental in history. And like, we know that everybody in this country uses a cell phone, and you're going to pay that cell phone bill because you know that that company will cut you off. And so using that to make sure that you're showing that you're paying these bills on time, and we can use that as a means to create your credit worthiness so that you can be qualified for a home loan.
Got you. Okay. And when it comes to I want to talk a little bit about healthcare, right? So I know one thing, I looked on your website and I saw that you're very connected to the needs of working families when it comes to the cost of healthcare, right? A lot of people say healthcare is very expensive.
It is.
And people can't afford it.
It's not expensive to you, Tyrik?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know mine is. As a member of Congress, mine is expensive.
Yeah. No, it's definitely high. So, and I want to know, what do you believe are the most urgent steps Congress can take to ease the financial and emotional burden of caregiving for families and in Georgia specifically, and then also across the country?
So, I mean, first of all, here in the state of Georgia, we still have Republican leadership who has failed to expand Medicaid. So, through the Affordable Care Act, there's an initiative where people who are low income and need assistance buying this expensive health care that we just talked about, they can get a subsidy to help cover the cost of their health care. But in Georgia, we literally have leaders in this state who are telling people that you are too poor to even get assistance, because that is what is happening. So we still have 11 states across the country who have refused to expand Medicaid. That means that we are giving away money, that free money, giving away money to other states to use for their citizens to get health care, but not taking that for our own people to get health care. We have 500,000 people in Georgia that lack health care because of the Republicans at the state legislature refusing to expand Medicaid. And that right there would be life-changing. And that is coming from subsidies from the federal government to help people have more affordable health care through the Affordable Care Act. But then in addition to that, you mentioned like making sure that people could care for their family. And so that is the other thing that Vice President Harris, making sure that people can use their Medicare benefits to use it for home health care coverage, because that is expensive. People go bankrupt. They quit their jobs just to take care of their elderly parents. And the care economy is essential because we know that care and care workers make every other line of work possible in this country. So it is critical that people are paying attention to not just one level of government. We have to have the president at the top of the ticket, but Vice President Harris, when she's president, she has to have a Congress that can work with her and send bills to her desk to sign into law. And then in addition to that, also looking at how we're just people's economic mobility in this country, because if people were able to start, sustain, and grow their small businesses, that gives them more money to afford that expensive health care, Tyrik. Mm-hmm. I've been without health care before. I know what it's like. I remember I was running for state senate, and I left my job to run the campaign, and I had a car accident. That wasn't that long ago. And I didn't have health insurance. And I sat on the side of the road right on I-20 here in Atlanta, sat on the side of the road, and the police came. My car left on a tow truck, and I knew State Farm was going to take care of the car. But I refused to get in the ambulance because I couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. And no one should have to live that way. Health care is a basic human right, and no one in this country should go without the care that they deserve.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure you really opened some people's eyes, and I'm sure some people have been in a situation like that, or maybe even worse.
I mean, and even thinking about the cost of medicine, there's not one person in this country who doesn't know someone who's been impacted by diabetes and needed to take insulin just to stay alive. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandma had diabetes. I remember she would pick and choose, kind of rationing out her insulin medicine because she couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And no one should have to live that way. I lost my grandma when she was in her early 60s because of uncontrolled diabetes.
Wow.
And it didn't have to be that way. These are policy decisions. So we need to elect leaders in this country who are doing things like when Vice President Harris showed up to make the tie-breaking vote to lower the cost of insulin to no more than $35 per person in this country. Mm-hmm. So these are life-saving decisions that she's already made, that we're making as a United States Congress, and we need more leaders willing to step up and stand up for the American people, not for themselves and their wealthy billionaire friends.
Yeah, and that capping the cost at $35, that was a bill that Senator Warnock introduced, right?
He did.
Now
he introduced that in the U.S. Senate.
Okay, yeah.
And Vice President Harris was the tie-breaking vote.
Wow. History making.
And it changes lives. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know someone, Tyrik, who's been insulin dependent. They might not have even told you, but there are people in your life that are dependent on insulin just to stay alive.
Yeah, definitely. I do know of some people, so it's definitely a critical situation. And moving on, want to talk a little bit about voting rights, because we had touched on that. So you've been at the forefront on your platform, and with Election Day coming up pretty soon, what immediate steps do you see as crucial to protect the integrity of voting rights and voting access to ensure that every citizen can cast their ballot without barriers?
So, Tyrik, I've introduced a number of pieces of legislation. Even a voting rights series this past Congress, and I am still working on that. And I will never stop fighting for voting rights, because voting rights should be standardized across this country. It shouldn't be piecemeal depending on what your zip code is and where you live, what your access to the ballot is. My 9-year-old son, Carter, he decided he's been taking French. So we went to Paris for Christmas last year. Tyrik, you probably like, Congressman, where are you going with this story? But hear me out. So we get to Paris, and Carter loves McDonald's Happy Meals. Tyrik, when we walked into that McDonald's in Paris, Carter knew that he was still going to get his chicken nuggets. He was still going to get French fries, and he was going to get a toy and a drink.
Yeah.
And that is standardized across the globe. He goes to the McDonald's on Camp Creek Parkway or the McDonald's in Paris, and he knows exactly what he's going to get when he orders his Happy Meal. But here in our country, we can go from county to county or state to state and not even have the same access to the ballot. And it doesn't have to be this way. People have made voting rights political. But when I fight for voting rights, Tyrik, I'm not just fighting for the people who think the same way that I think. I don't want voting rights just for Democrats or just Republicans, but for all Americans, because our democracy works best when more people are involved.
Yeah. And I know, like, there's been a couple of things within the past few years that I've seen. I remember they said it was illegal for people to hand out snacks and waters to people standing in line and stuff like that. And then I remember there was something with the Georgian election board where they were trying to make it so they would have to hand count ballots on election night. And I'm like,
absolutely.
That sounds like we're not going to have a winner in Georgia.
Well, but Tyrik, we took him to court and we won.
Yeah.
And a judge said that is asinine.
Yeah.
That is just, it's too late in the process. It's going to cause chaos and confusion. But that's what they were trying to do. They wanted to create chaos and confusion in this election process so that when Donald Trump loses Georgia once again, they can say, oh, but see, we weren't sure because of X, Y, and Z. But a judge stopped it in its tracks, called it for what it was. It was a distraction tactic and not meant to increase access to the ballot. Every opportunity to change a voting law should be about bringing more people to the polls, increasing access, not restricting it. And that's what I'm fighting for every day as your member of Congress.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I want to ask you this, right? So with this, obviously, there is a possibility. I mean, we've seen it before, asking for the 11-something thousand votes. Do you think we could see something like that again, where he tries to overturn the results if he does lose?
Tyrik, I don't put anything past Donald John Trump. When people show you who they are, you should believe them the first time. And Donald Trump has shown us that he is willing to lie, steal, and try and cheat to take this election away from the people. But I know that the good voters in the state of Georgia are showing up. Over 3 million people have already cast their ballot, and we want to leave no doubt. That's why I need people to go to iwillvote.com, find their early voting location, and cast their ballot in this historic election, because there are a lot of people who are trying to keep us away from the ballot. If your vote was not powerful and important, there wouldn't be so many attempts to restrict your access to the ballot.
Yeah, and do you personally trust Georgia's voting system?
So I watch everybody, Tyrik. I watch everybody. Trust but verify. And so what I know is that the Republicans keep trying to say that there's voter fraud, but they can't bring the evidence and the proof. So when I show up to cast my ballot, I show up, I cast my ballot, and I wait for the votes to be counted. What I know is that in this country, we believe in the peaceful transfer of power. And so I have won every time that I've been on the ballot, but had I not won, Tyrik, that meant that I didn't get enough votes. Not that I go out and try and steal extra votes to steal the election, but that's what Donald Trump tried to do. He tried to steal this election away from the Georgians who showed up and cast their ballots in 2020, and we cannot let that happen. That's why we don't need it to be as close as it was in 2020, and we need to show up in this history-making election and cast our votes to leave no doubt, because I don't put anything past Donald Trump and his people that he calls his pit bulls on the State Board of Elections. We've got work to do, Georgia. We've got work to do to make sure that your voices are heard loud and clear above anyone who tries to attempt to steal your access to the ballot.
Okay. And how do you think we can prevent, if it does try to happen again, how can the country prevent another January 6th?
We prevent another January 6th. Well, first of all, Tyrik, my third day as a member of Congress was January 6th. I was there on Capitol Hill the day that the attack happened on the U.S. Congress. And on that day, I was so new to Congress that I didn't even know how to get to the safe room that they were telling members of Congress to go to. I was sitting in my office because that was going to be the first day that I went down to speak on the floor of the House of Representatives. I was going to be defending the Electoral College votes of the state of Georgia. But because it was COVID, I was told to stay in my office until Arizona was finished, and Georgia was expected to be the next state that was going to be objected to. I had my remarks. I was nervous. I was ready to go down, serving in this historic seat that was held by the late Congressman John Lewis, getting ready to go and defend our Electoral College votes. And I never got that opportunity because then the Capitol was breached and we were under attack and we were told to go to the safe room. I didn't know how to get there. No one should have to live that way. I went home that night. My son was 5 years old at the time, and he was scared. He was in D.C. with me because it was an exciting moment for our family. They were there to see me get sworn in. And he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, are we safe? Can the bad guys get to us?" And I told him yes, not really knowing if I was telling him the truth. And I said, "We're on the 6th floor, like we're in our apartment in D.C. They couldn't get to us." And he said, "Mommy, I saw them climbing the building like Spider-Man. So how do we know that we're safe?" Well, now I can tell Carter that I know that we'll be safe if we make sure that Donald Trump is never let anywhere near the White House again. So that is why this election is so critical, not just for our voting rights, not just for our reproductive freedom, not just for our economic freedom, but for our national security, to make sure that the people of this country are safe so that we don't allow someone who is willing to stand by and allow an attack on the U.S. Capitol to happen ever again.
Wow. Dang, I definitely hate that you guys had to go through that. I remember sitting there looking at the TV and just trying to figure out what is happening and, feeling for the people that were in the building, like you and your fellow colleagues and stuff. It was definitely
looked like
a sad
something
day.
out of a movie that should never have happened here in this country, and it doesn't have to happen again. That's why people have to show up and cast their ballots.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then just to close it out, I want to know, what do the next couple of days look like for you? What's your plan to get voters out to the polls? Is Vice President Harris coming back to Georgia before the election is before election day? All that good stuff.
Tyrik is looking like team no sleep over here for me, but we have a lot going over the next few days leading up until polls closing on November 5th. We do expect Vice President Harris back again. The last time I saw her, just earlier this week, was it this week? Tyrik, my days are blurring together at this point. But the last time I greeted her on the tarmac just a few days ago, I told her she just might as well get a spare key to my house because she's been here so much. But that shows you how important Georgia is to winning this election. Georgia is critical. So that is why I'm using every opportunity to talk to voters across the state, not just here in Atlanta in my deep blue district, but even in red areas, because we know that everyone wants their freedoms protected, and protecting our freedoms transcends partisanship. And so Democrats, Republicans alike are voicing their vote and showing up for Kamala Harris. So I'm doing some campus activations, going over to the AUC to talk with students there, doing something with some members of Black Greek sororities and fraternities here. Visiting some churches. I hear there might be a little tailgating in my future at the Falcons game.
Oh, okay.
And we are making sure that we are touching voters at every opportunity because this vote is so important. Our freedoms and our future are on the ballot.
Nice. Yeah, and I've been to a couple of games and I've seen y'all's tailgate and stuff. So
it's lit. Come on through.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And where will you be on election night?
On election night, I will be in Atlanta, not leaving the state, staying here in Battleground, Georgia, and I will probably be down at the Hyatt Regency Atlanta on election night. Come through. I hope to be celebrating and having some good news to share.
Okay, and is that your personal watch party, or Democratic Party of Georgia watch party?
It is going to be a collective.
Okay, gotcha. And then do you know where Vice President Harris is going to be?
So I just saw, I have not seen anything to confirm this, but I saw on Instagram, you know, everybody get a little Instagram news, that she's going to be at Howard University, her alma mater, watching the election results. So
interesting. Okay, nice. And so if Vice President Harris does come out on top, how do you guys plan to celebrate that?
Tyrik, I don't even know, but you will probably hear me screaming from wherever I am when she comes out on top. And it's going to be a whole vibe, but we are going to celebrate that night or the day that the election is called, because I don't want people to feel like it's something nefarious if they don't get election results right away. So if you don't hear election results right when polls close, be patient, y'all. We want accurate results, and we will get those results. And so be patient as the numbers come in, as our hardworking election day and poll workers are counting the ballots and getting everyone's votes counted. If there are long lines, if you get there, polls close at 7. But if you are in line, stay in line. Stay in line until your vote is cast. And then we're going to make sure that all of those votes are counted. And we're going to be celebrating somewhere. I don't know where, I don't know what time, and I don't know what day it's going to be, Tyrik. But I'm looking forward to the celebration.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. This was fantastic. You were great. And we got a couple more days to Election Day. And early voting ends here in Georgia on Friday. And if you don't get your vote in by Friday, you can head out to the polls on Tuesday, November 5th. And I already looked at the weather. It's going to be nice and sunny. It's going to be hot. So no excuses, right?
Let's do it. iwillvote.com/GA. Find your nearest polling location.
Fantastic. And thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to the Black Information Network on your home for 24/7 news. It's been Tyrik Wynn. Catch you guys next time.